About a month and a half ago, I took it upon myself to completely repaint a guitar. I always knew that I wanted a personalized guitar, but I never really knew what exactly I wanted. Not to mention that the price of a customized guitar is absolutely ridiculous. But seeing as the ongoing pandemic has given me a lot more free time, I decided that I wanted to try and learn something new. After talking with my dad, he agreed to let me get a second-hand Squier Strat. It was originally black, but after watching MGK's cover of Misery Business over and over, I decided that I too wanted a pink guitar. I decided on this model mostly for its aesthetic appeal of a classic kind of punk rock guitar, but my dad also wanted me to get a guitar that I could actually play when all of this was over. Like any good project, I started off this whole thing by doing some research. I wasn't 100% sure of how I was gonna do it. All I knew was that I couldn't just spray paint over the existing color. Once I had my plan in place, I had to take everything apart. First things first, I unscrewed the neck. I kept all of the plates and screws and buttons in little Ziploc bags and put them aside for later so that I wouldn't lose anything. Here I am removing the neck. And from there, I was able to start removing the pick guard, which holds the pickups. So, took out the pick guard and left the pickups in, as well as the buttons. So then we're looking at the inside. According to my father, the black cables are the grounds, and then they all go to this first button here, which is most likely volume. The second black cable is connected to the back, so I actually haven't taken out the back completely because it's soldered there to the end. So you'll unsolder that, and then we'll just unsolder that and unscrew this one so that we can take it out and we won't have to touch any of the wiring here. We found that this gray cable here actually is divided into two, if you can see it there. So there's probably the ground, which connects to these black ones here, and then the white one is the signal, which would take the signal from the guitar to the jack and then later to the amps. So it's also divided here at the jack, so then we'll just unsolder those to avoid having to cut it and touch anything on the actual buttons. Here, my dad is helping me unsolder the guitar jack to then allow me to actually move on and start taking off the paint. I removed the guitar's paint using a heat gun and a paint scraper, and what the heat gun basically does is it blows hot air onto the paint and melts the plastic, which allowed me to pull off the plastic using the paint scraper. As you can see here, once it cools, it's basically just a hardened piece of plastic that I scraped off. I found that when holding the heat gun in a certain area, it will actually chip the paint off on its own, so you don't necessarily have to be scraping the entire way. And here's the mess of paint chips. And here's the guitar, all clean and paint-free. Then I went in with a 330 grit sandpaper and worked my way up to 3000 grit sandpaper, making sure that the surface is smooth. I then used a grain filler. I got this grain filler from Color Tone, and it's a 2-to-1 ratio of grain filler to water, and so I mixed that and made this little paste. It's kind of gross looking, so you can see I made a bit of a face. And what the grain filler basically does is that it plugs any holes and bumps that may be in the guitar's wood and makes it a smoother surface. So I laid it down a thicker layer with the paint scraper, and then I went in with a little tool to get the grain filler out of any of the screw holes in the guitar. Then I went back and scraped it to a thinner layer. Once that was done, I went back in with the sandpaper, same thing, 300 grit all the way to 3000. So I have my guitar taped off all of the bits that I don't need paint in, even in the back here. There we go. And then I tied it up here so then I don't have to hold it and I can just rotate it and spray it. And then we made a booth out of an old furniture piece and we taped some styrofoam to cover up the holes so then it doesn't get everywhere. Before actually going in with the colored paint, I went in with a white paint and primer by Rust-Oleum and just gave it one thin layer of the primer so that the pink wouldn't go directly onto the wood. I just sprayed across a few times, trying to get it as even as possible. I've got the primer coat on, and if you can see here, there are some drops and then like areas where I accidentally touched it. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in with some 220 grit sandpaper and try and sand that down. Not too hard though, because I don't want to expose the wood. I just want to make sure that it's smooth and even before I can finally get the actual color on it. So yep. Then I could finally go in with the color. I chose the Rust-Oleum paint in Berry Pink, and I did the same thing where I went in streaks across to get even streaks and cover the whole guitar. I did 3 layers every day and then let it dry overnight, then came back and did the same the next day, making sure to sand before I went and did my 3 new layers of paint. This just allowed me to make sure that I was getting an actually even surface. For gloss, I went in with the Color Tone Gloss, or guitar lacquer, just like the grain filler. And I drew a little fallen angel devil logo on the back of my guitar that I did with a Sharpie oil paint pen. Then with the gloss, I did the same thing as I did with the paint. But of course, not everything goes as planned. So I was supposed to be putting the final coats of gloss on it today, but it slipped and I knocked it against the work surface and I dented it and chipped some of the paint off, which really sucks, but I need to fix it. So I'm gonna go in with the 3000 grit sandpaper again and try and get rid of the bump, and then I will paint it again. And that means I can't gloss the rest of the guitar because I can't gloss on this part. So yeah, sucks. What I ended up doing to fix this is that I dabbed some paint onto a cloth and dabbed it in the affected area after sanding it, and then my dad put a drop of super glue that I let dry overnight, sanded it down, and then moved on. Once I was done with the gloss, my dad set me up with 4 different buffing liquids that I put onto 4 different sponges and set them up on the electric drill and buffed out my guitar. I sprayed it down with a bit of water to lessen the friction, and then poured my buffing liquids onto the sponges and went in at them with the power drill. Then I wiped them down with their specific cloths to not mix any of the liquids and any of the residue, and make sure that I was getting a smooth, polished finish to my guitar. Then I went in with an auto wax. I used a cloth to get it on and smeared it kind of all over the guitar, let it dry for a few minutes until the surface was hazy. Then I went back in with the cloth and wiped it off. From there, I was finally able to put things back together. I lined the inside of my guitar with a copper foil, and what this does is that it will just hopefully increase the electrical conductivity within the guitar. And then I soldered back the cables, screwed back in the pick guard, and put back in the neck, and that was basically it. Finally, I restrung the guitar with some elixir strings that I got at the Guitar Center, and yeah, I was ready to play. Hey, so this is Editing Miley, and I've actually just discovered that I didn't film a proper outro for this video, so I just wanted to take a second to say that since I finished the guitar and filmed this video, I actually ordered a new set of tuning pegs because I didn't like the ones that came with the guitar, and I also got a set of strap locks that I changed onto my guitar just to make things more stable. Yeah, the guitar plays really well. It sounds nice. There are no issues with it that I have found so far. And yeah, if you like this insight into how I completely repainted my guitar, then give this video a like and subscribe if you are interested in music things or just general life things, and I'm sure you'll find at least some of my content interesting. I hope to be able to post more often and more consistently and have more interesting content in the future, but for now, thanks for watching. Bye!